Jasmine Crockett stood alone at the podium, the Senate hearing room's bright lights illuminating her purple blazer as cameras clicked rapidly. Just moments earlier, former Attorney General Bill Barr had unleashed a devastating accusation. Congresswoman Crockett's allegations are complete fabrications. She's deliberately misleading the American people. His words hung heavy in the air, the Republican side of the chamber erupting in applause while Democrats shifted uncomfortably. Crockett gripped her tablet tightly, her expression unwavering despite the public attack from one of Washington's most powerful legal figures. Barr sat confidently at the witness table, his familiar half-smile suggesting he believed he'd decisively discredited this 43-year-old Democratic rising star with decades less Washington experience than him. But what the seasoned former Attorney General didn't know was that Crockett hadn't come unprepared. Hidden in her notes was evidence that would turn this hearing upside down. Documentation that wouldn't just defend her integrity, but potentially end Barr's long-distinguished career in a single afternoon. As the committee chairman began to move on, Crockett raised her hand. "Mr. Chairman, I request time to respond to these serious allegations against my character." The room fell silent. She stepped toward the microphone, the calm in her eyes masking the storm she was about to unleash. This wasn't just a congressional hearing anymore. It was about to become the most explosive political confrontation of the year. Before diving into this remarkable story, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss our latest political breakdowns and dramatic confrontations that are reshaping Washington. The tension in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room had been building all morning. Bill Barr, 74, sat comfortably in the witness chair, his round glasses and conservative dark suit projecting the image of stability and authority he'd cultivated through decades in Washington's power corridors. As Attorney General under 2 Republican presidents and respected voice in conservative legal circles, Barr was used to commanding respect from both allies and opponents. "Thank you for having me here today," Barr began, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "I'm here to set the record straight about the Justice Department's actions during my tenure." Republican senators nodded appreciatively, knowing Barr's testimony would help counter Democratic narratives about politicization of the department. Sitting across the room, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett watched intently. Though relatively new to Congress, Crockett had quickly built a reputation as a formidable presence. A former civil rights attorney from Dallas with a law degree from the University of Houston, and she'd risen through Texas politics before winning her House seat. Known for her sharp questioning and refusal to back down, Crockett had become a Democratic voice that Republicans increasingly couldn't ignore. 3 weeks earlier, Crockett had publicly accused Barr of deliberately misleading Congress about Justice Department investigations during his tenure. "I have reason to believe the former Attorney General concealed critical information from Congress and possibly perjured himself," she'd stated on national television. The explosive allegation had triggered this special joint House-Senate hearing. Barr shifted in his seat, adjusting his tie before addressing Crockett's claims directly. "Congresswoman Crockett's accusations are not just misleading, they're completely fabricated. I've served this country faithfully for decades while she's been in Congress barely long enough to find the cafeteria." Laughter rippled through the Republican side as cameras captured his dismissive wave. The Congresswoman claims to have evidence. "I concealed information." She doesn't. She claims I misled this body under oath. I did not. Barr's voice hardened. "These are serious allegations from someone seeking headlines rather than truth. In my 40 years of public service, I've maintained the highest ethical standards. Unlike the Congresswoman, I don't traffic in conspiracy theories for social media attention." The stakes couldn't be higher. If Barr was right, Crockett's credibility would be shattered. Her promising political future potentially derailed by overreach. But if Crockett could substantiate her allegations, one of America's most powerful legal figures might face not just disgrace, but potential criminal charges for lying to Congress. Behind her composed exterior, Crockett knew exactly what she was up against. Not just Barr, but the entire Republican establishment rallying behind him. Conservative media had spent the past week portraying her as an attention-seeking junior representative out of her depth. Crockett's conspiracy ran the Fox News Kairos. "Democrats' desperate attack on Barr," declared the Wall Street Journal editorial. But what nobody in the room yet realized was that Crockett hadn't made her accusations lightly. In her briefcase sat a sealed manila envelope containing documents that had arrived anonymously at her office. Internal Justice Department communications that appeared to directly contradict Barr's sworn congressional testimony. As the chairman recognized her for questioning, Crockett gathered her notes, her heart pounding, but her resolve unshaken. The next 5 minutes would determine whether she'd be vindicated or vilified, and potentially reshape the legacy of one of America's most powerful legal figures. "Mr. Barr, thank you for appearing today," Crockett began, her voice steady as she adjusted the microphone. The chamber quieted, senators leaning forward in anticipation of the confrontation they'd been waiting for. "I'd like to address your characterization of my allegations as fabricated." Barr nodded slightly, the confidence evident in his posture as he settled in for what he clearly expected to be an easy rebuttal of an inexperienced congresswoman. "On June 18, 2022, you testified before this committee that you had no knowledge of the Jefferson County investigation until after the Washington Post broke the story. Is that still your testimony today?" Crockett asked, maintaining direct eye contact. "That's correct, Congresswoman," Barr replied without hesitation. "As I stated then and maintain now, I first learned of that investigation from media reports, after which I requested a briefing from my staff." Crockett nodded, typing something into her tablet. "And you further testified that no communications about that investigation ever reached your office prior to the Post's reporting." "That's right," Barr said firmly. "That investigation was handled at the district level without Main Justice involvement until after it became public. Any suggestion otherwise is simply false." The committee chairman, sensing the building tension, interjected. "The Congresswoman's time is limited. Please proceed with substantive questions." Crockett smiled slightly. "My questions are very substantive, Mr. Chairman." She turned back to Barr. "Mr. Barr, are you familiar with the Justice Department communication protocol called Eagles?" For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Barr's face. "It's one of many internal communication systems." "Yes. Could you explain to the committee what Eagles is used for?" Crockett pressed. Barr shifted in his seat. "It's a secure notification system for particularly sensitive investigations, but it's primarily formational for leadership, not operational." "And would Eagles notifications be sent to the Attorney General's office for investigations involving elected officials?" Crockett continued. "Potentially, yes," Barr conceded. "Though I wouldn't necessarily see them personally, my staff would review them first." The chamber had gone completely silent now, the senators sensing the methodical trap being set. "Mr. Barr, did you or your office receive any Eagles notifications regarding the Jefferson County investigation prior to the Washington Post story?" "As I've testified previously, no," Barr stated firmly, though observers noticed his right hand now, gripping the edge of the table. Crockett took a deep breath. "Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record a document marked Exhibit C." She handed a paper to the clerk who distributed copies to committee members. "This is an Eagles notification dated March 4, 2022, 3 months before the Post story addressed directly to William Barr regarding the Jefferson County investigation." Murmurs erupted across the chamber as senators examined the document. Barr quickly scanned his copy, his expression darkening. "Additionally," Crockett continued, her voice rising slightly above the growing noise, "I have Exhibit D, which is an email from your then Chief of Staff acknowledging receipt of the notification and confirming you had been personally briefed on the matter." The Republican committee chairman banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order! Order in the committee." As the room quieted, he turned to Barr. "The witness may respond." Barr's face had wrined slightly, but his voice remained measured. "I see these documents, but without context and proper authentication, they prove nothing. Anyone could have produced these. This appears to be a political stunt using what I suspect are altered documents." "Altered documents," Crockett repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That's a serious allegation, Mr. Barr. No more serious than accusing a former Attorney General of lying to Congress," he countered sharply. The Democratic ranking member interjected. "Mr. Chairman, these documents appear to have Justice Department watermarks and tracking numbers." They look authentic to me. Appearances can be deceiving, Barr responded. In my experience, Congresswoman Crockett is attempting a political assassination based on incomplete information at best, fabricated evidence at worst. Crockett remained remarkably composed despite the direct attack. Mr. Barr, I understand your concern about document authenticity. Would you be surprised to learn that former Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monroe has signed an affidavit confirming the authenticity of these communications? The mention of Monroe's name caused visible discomfort across Barr's face. Monroe had been respected across party lines before retiring from the DOJ the previous year. I would need to see such an affidavit, Barr said carefully. Exhibit E, Mr. Chairman, Crockett said, distributing another document. As copies circulated, the atmosphere in the room transformed palpably. Republican senators were now whispering urgently to aides while Democrats studied the documents with growing intensity. Furthermore, Crockett continued, Exhibit F contains metadata verification from the Justice Department's own IT system, confirming these documents' authenticity and chain of custody. I believe that addresses Mr. Barr's concerns about fabrication. Barr was now visibly struggling to maintain his composure. Flipping through the documents while whispering urgently to his attorney, the chairman, looking increasingly uncomfortable, announced, We'll take a 15-minute recess to review these documents. He leaned toward his microphone, adding, Mr. Barr, I suggest you use this time to consult with your counsel. As the hearing paused, chaos erupted in the chamber. Journalists rushed toward the exits, phones pressed to their ears. Congressional staff huddled in urgent conversations, and Jasmine Crockett sat calmly reviewing her notes, knowing the real confrontation was just beginning. In the hallway outside, reporters surrounded committee members emerging from the room. These documents appear credible, admitted one Republican senator, his discomfort evident. If authenticated, they directly contradict the former Attorney General's sworn testimony. When the hearing resumed, the energy had completely shifted. Barr returned with not just his original attorney, but 2 additional lawyers, all wearing grave expressions. The defense strategy was clearly being recalibrated in real time. Before we continue, the chairman began. The committee has verified with the Justice Department that the document identification numbers match their internal records. We will proceed with the understanding that these appear to be authentic Justice Department communications. Barr leaned toward his microphone. Mr. Chairman, if I may, having consulted with counsel and reviewed these documents, I'd like to clarify my earlier testimony. The sudden pivot caused another stir in the room. It appears there may have been notifications that reached my office regarding this matter. However, I maintain that I personally was not adequately briefed on their significance. Crockett seized on the admission immediately. So, you're now changing your testimony. From having no knowledge to acknowledging these notifications did reach you directly contradicting your statement from just 20 minutes ago as well as your sworn testimony last year. I'm clarifying based on the documents you've presented, Barr replied tersely. Mr. Barr, Crockett said, her voice now stronger, more confident. I have one more exhibit to share with the committee. The room collectively held its breath. Exhibit G. Mr. Chairman, Crockett announced, her voice steady but forceful as she handed another document to the clerk. Unlike the previous papers, this was passed to the chairman first, who studied it with increasingly widened eyes before allowing its distribution. While the committee reviews this document, Crockett continued addressing the cameras as much as those present. I'll explain what they're seeing. This is a transcript of a recorded meeting between former Attorney General Barr and 5 senior Justice Department officials dated April the 12th, 2022. 2 months before Mr. Barr testified, he had no knowledge of the Jefferson County investigation. The gallery erupted in commotion as journalists frantically typed on phones and tablets. Committee members flipped through pages, expressions of shock crossing faces on both sides of the aisle. Order, the chairman demanded repeatedly, hammering his gavel. I will have order. When the room finally quieted, Crockett continued with methodical precision. In this transcript, Mr. Barr explicitly discusses the Jefferson County investigation. Let me quote directly from page 3. She adjusted her glasses and read, I've reviewed the Jefferson file. This investigation needs to stay completely compartmentalized. Nobody outside this room discusses it, especially not with the oversight committees. I'll handle any congressional inquiries personally if they arise." The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to Barr, whose face had drained of color. "Mr. Barr," Crockett said, her voice now quiet, yet somehow filling the entire chamber, "this transcript directly contradicts your sworn congressional testimony. You didn't just know about the investigation. You actively directed your team to withhold information from Congress." Barr leaned toward his attorneys, engaged in urgent whispered consultation. After nearly a minute, he straightened and addressed the committee. "Mr. Chairman, in light of these new documents, I need to consult further with counsel regarding potential Fifth Amendment considerations before continuing my testimony." The statement effectively invoking his right against self-incrimination sent shockwaves through the room. Veteran political observers knew that such a move from someone of Barr's stature was unprecedented and tantamount to an admission of serious legal jeopardy. The chairman, visibly stunned, turned to the committee's counsel for guidance. After a brief consultation, he addressed Barr. "This committee respects your constitutional rights, Mr. Barr. However, I must note for the record that this development is extraordinary and deeply concerning." Turning to Crockett, whose composed exterior belied the seismic impact of what she just accomplished, the chairman asked, "Congresswoman, do you have authentication verification for this transcript as well?" "Yes, Mr. Chairman," she replied, presenting another document. "Exhibit H contains forensic authentication of the recording from which this transcript was produced, verified by 2 independent audio analysis firms. Additionally, 3 participants in that meeting have provided signed affidavit confirming its accuracy." A senior Republican senator known as a staunch Barr defender requested recognition from the chair. When granted, he addressed Crockett directly, his voice grave. "Congresswoman, these are extraordinarily serious allegations with potentially criminal implications. May I ask how you came into possession of these documents?" Crockett nodded, prepared for the question. "These materials were provided by whistleblowers within the Justice Department who were deeply concerned about potential perjury before Congress. They approached my office after exhausting internal reporting channels without result. We spent 6 weeks authenticating these documents before I made any public statements." The senator's follow-up was even more surprising. "And have you shared these materials with the Department of Justice?" "Yes," Senator Crockett replied. "My office transmitted complete copies to the Attorney General's office and the DOJ Inspector General yesterday after we'd completed final authentication steps." This revelation prompted Barr's lead attorney to stand. "Mr. Chairman, given this disclosure of a potential ongoing Justice Department investigation, we request an immediate adjournment of this hearing." The Democratic ranking member interjected forcefully. "With respect, Mr. Chairman, the American people deserve answers about potential perjury by a former Attorney General. This isn't a criminal trial. It's congressional oversight. The witness has been caught in what appears to be a significant falsehood under oath." As committee members debated the proper course, cameras remained fixed on Jasmine Crockett, who maintained remarkable composure despite having just delivered what political analysts would later call the most consequential congressional confrontation since Watergate Hour. Barr sat stiffly at the witness table. The confident demeanor from earlier completely evaporated. Occasionally, he whispered to his attorneys, but mostly he stared straight ahead, the political and legal implications clearly weighing heavily on his mind. After extended discussion, the chairman made his ruling. "This hearing will continue, but the witness has indicated his intention to assert his Fifth Amendment right. Congresswoman Crockett, you may proceed with questions, understanding the witness may decline to answer." What followed was 20 minutes of devastating inquiry. With surgical precision, Crockett walked through a timeline demonstrating not just Barr's knowledge of the investigation, but his active role in managing its political implications. With each question Barr declined to answer, invoking his Fifth Amendment right, the gravity of the situation became more apparent. "Mr. Beer," Crockett said, nearing the end of her time, "these documents indicate you not only knew about the Jefferson County investigation, but actively directed your subordinates to withhold that information from Congress. Then you came before this very committee and testified under oath that you had no knowledge of it whatsoever. The American people deserve to know. Was this an isolated incident, or were there other instances where you deliberately misled Congress under oath? Barr's attorney interjected. The witness continues to assert his Fifth Amendment right. Crockett nodded. I understand. One final question. The transcript includes your statement that, and I quote, "This approach worked before, and it will work again." Can you identify the previous instances you were referring to where withholding information from Congress worked? For the first time, Barr himself responded, "On advice of counsel, I assert my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination." Crockett's time expired, but the damage was done. The former Attorney General, once one of the most powerful legal authorities in the country, had been reduced to repeatedly invoking his constitutional protection against self-incrimination, a stunning fall from grace playing out on national television. As other committee members began their questioning, many simply yielded their time back, recognizing that the hearing's defining moment had already occurred. Republican members initially prepared to defend Barr vigorously now distanced themselves, asking procedural questions rather than substantive ones. In the press gallery, journalists were already broadcasting initial reactions. What we're witnessing is unprecedented, one network legal analyst stated. A former attorney general effectively admitting he may have committed perjury before Congress. The legal and political ramifications are enormous. By the time the chairman gabbled the hearing to a close 3 hours later, the political landscape had fundamentally shifted. Barr was escorted out through a side door, avoiding the press gathered outside. But Jasmine Crockett walked confidently to the bank of microphones in the hallway, ready to address a nation now hanging on her every word. The rising congresswoman from Texas, dismissed by Barr just hours earlier as someone who couldn't find the cafeteria, had methodically dismantled one of Washington's most formidable figures, using nothing but carefully verified evidence and precise questioning. In doing so, she not only defended her own integrity, but potentially ended a storied Washington career built over decades. As camera flashes illuminated her composed expression, one veteran political reporter was overheard whispering to a colleague, "Remember this moment. We just witnessed the birth of a political force that Washington will be reckoning with for years to come." By the time the evening news broadcast began, video clips of Crockett's methodical dismantling of Barr had gone viral across every platform. Barr-cut and Crockett receipts were trending nationwide, with the confrontation dominating both traditional and social media. In my 30 years covering Capitol Hill, I've never seen anything quite like what happened today, said veteran CNN political analyst Michael Roberts, a former attorney general, essentially admitting through his Fifth Amendment invocations that he may have purged himself before Congress. The political earthquake is just beginning. Inside the Justice Department, emergency meetings were convened at the highest levels. By 7 p.m., the Attorney General issued a TUR statement. In light of today's congressional testimony and new evidence, I have directed the Inspector General to conduct an immediate investigation into potential false statements made to Congress by former department officials. Additionally, I have appointed a special counsel to examine whether criminal charges are warranted. For Barr, the aftermath was swift and devastating. Law firms where he held consultancies began quietly removing his name from their websites. Conservative think tanks that had celebrated him as a legal luminary issued carefully worded statements about taking these allegations seriously. Cable news shows where he'd been a frequent commentator suddenly couldn't find room in their schedules. By midnight, Barr released a statement through his attorney. "I categorically deny intentionally misleading Congress. The documents presented today have been stripped of critical context. I look forward to a full airing of the facts in the appropriate forum." But the damage control came too late. His carefully crafted image as Washington's elder statesman had already crumbled. For Crockett, everything had changed. The congresswoman who had entered the hearing room that morning as a relative newcomer emerged as a national figure. Her office was flooded with interview requests from every major network and publication. Fellow Democrats who had privately questioned her decision to target Barr now scrambled to align themselves with her. What Representative Crockett demonstrated today wasn't just courage. It was masterful preparation and flawless execution. The House Speaker told reporters she reminded us all why congressional oversight matters. Even more significantly, text messages began flooding her phone from whistleblowers throughout government agencies. "Your handling of the Barr evidence has given me courage," read one. "I have documentation of similar issues at my agency. Can we meet?" 3 days after the hearing, Crockett appeared on Face the Nation for her first major interview since the confrontation. The host began by asking how she'd obtained the damning evidence. "The truth is that integrity still exists in our institutions," Crockett replied. "Career officials who witnessed wrongdoing were troubled by it. When they exhausted internal channels, they made the difficult decision to approach Congress. I spent weeks ensuring every document was authenticated before proceeding." "Were you intimidated going up against someone of Barr's stature?" the host asked. Crockett smiled slightly. "I'm a trial lawyer from Dallas who's faced tough opponents before, but this wasn't about me versus Bill Barr. It was about facts versus fiction, truth versus deception." The evidence spoke for itself within the Republican establishment. A divide quickly emerged. Some closed ranks around Barr, claiming he was the victim of a Democrat witch hunt. But others, particularly younger conservatives, distanced themselves. "If the evidence is authentic, and it appears to be, then this represents a serious breach of trust," said one rising Republican senator. "No one is above accountability regardless of which party they serve." Legal experts painted an increasingly bleak picture for Barr. The transcript and supporting documents present a textbook case of potential perjury, explained former federal prosecutor James Harrington. The fact that he immediately invoked the Fifth Amendment speaks volumes about his legal exposure. 2 weeks after the hearing, the first criminal domino fell. The Justice Department announced charges against 2 former Barr aides for making false statements and obstruction. Their indictments reference directing by a senior department official, a clear reference to Barr himself. According to legal analysts, Barr's legacy was being rewritten in real time. News organizations published extensive timelines comparing his statements under oath with the contradicting evidence. Law school ethics professors incorporated the case into their curricula. The Washington Post ran a devastating feature titled "The Two Faces of William Barr: Public Testimony versus Private Actions." Meanwhile, Crockett's trajectory continued upward. Respected for her methodical approach rather than grandstanding, she received the rare honor of being named to additional House committees despite her junior status. Veterans on Capitol Hill noted that committee hearings changed subtly but significantly after the Barr incident. Witnesses were notably more cautious, aware that substantive evidence could surface to contradict false testimony. 1 month after the hearing, the final blow to Barr's reputation came from an unexpected quarter. The conservative National Review published a lengthy editorial titled "Principle Over Party: The Case Against William Barr." Conservatives who believe in rule of law and constitutional governance cannot remain silent. The editors wrote, "The evidence revealed by Representative Crockett points to a troubling pattern of deception that undermines the very principles we claim to uphold. If we demand accountability from our opponents but excuse it from our allies, we forfeit any claim to principled governance." 6 weeks after the hearing, Barr's legal team entered negotiations with prosecutors. Sources close to the discussions revealed that Barr was seeking a deal to avoid prison time in exchange for cooperation regarding broader patterns of congressional deception. For Jasmine Crockett, the personal vindication was complete when the Inspector General released a preliminary report confirming the authenticity of all documents she had presented and concluding that testimony provided to Congress appears to have been knowingly false in multiple material respects. In her Dallas district office, surrounded by her original campaign staff who had been with her since the beginning, Crockett reflected on the whirlwind events. "When I decided to pursue this, many people warned me that going after someone like Barr would end my career, not his," she told them. But that calculation missed something fundamental: the power of irrefutable evidence and the American people's ability to recognize truth when they see it. As she spoke, her chief of staff handed her a phone showing the breaking news. William Barr had reached an agreement with prosecutors. pleading guilty to a single felony count of making false statements to Congress. The plea deal included surrendering his law license and a substantial fine, though no prison time due to his age and cooperation. The political earthquake triggered by that single congressional hearing continued to reshape Washington. Government whistleblowers emboldened by Crockett's handling of their colleagues' evidence came forward across multiple agencies. Congressional oversight, long dismissed by many as theatrical and ineffective, regained its teeth, and a new generation of political leaders took note of how preparation and precision could triumph over power and position. The story of how Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett brought down one of Washington's most untouchable figures became more than a political confrontation. It evolved into a case study taught in law schools and political science programs nationwide, not because of partisan implications, but because it demonstrated how the system of checks and balances could still function when wielded with skill and substantiated evidence. 6 months later, as she announced her intention to run for Senate, Crockett's campaign website featured a simple quote that encapsulated her approach to public service. "In a world of loud accusations, evidence speaks loudest of all." The fall of Bill Barr and rise of Jasmine Crockett didn't just change their respective careers. It reminded America that accountability could still reach the highest levels of power and that sometimes, against all odds, the truth really does prevail. If you've made it this far in this incredible story, you're clearly someone who cares about political accountability and justice. Don't miss our future breakdowns of Washington's most consequential confrontations. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you will be first to see our newest videos. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on this historic showdown between Crockett and Barr and what you think it means for accountability in Washington going forward.